Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Despite the cold weather, you're here with us. I hope the events and the workshops kept you active and warm today. This is the last event of the convening, and we will have a reception after this, so please stick around. There will be delicious food catered to us. This convening is organized by the 45th cycle of AIM Fellows, and this specific panel is organized by Erick Alejandro Hernandez, Massiel Mafes, and me, Nazli Efe. Unfortunately, Erick is not here with us because he's at a residency, but Massiel is here, and Massiel and I will be moderating this panel. We cannot explain how thrilled we are to have these notable guests with us today. There's one important common thing between us. At some point in our lives, we were all AIM Fellows, and the panel's name is Paths and Practices, AIM Alumni in Conversation. So, Diana Al Hadid, she was an AIM Fellow in 2006. Gyun Hur, she was a fellow in 2018, and Woomin Kim was a fellow in 2022. We're so happy to have you here. Diana Al Hadid examines the historical frameworks and perspectives that continue to shape discourse on culture and materials today. With a practice spanning sculpture, wall reliefs, and works on paper, the artist weaves together enigmatic narratives that draw inspiration from both ancient and modern civilizations. Al Hadid's rich allegorical constructions are born from art historical religious imagery, ancient manuscripts, female archetypes, and folkloric storytelling. Born in Aleppo, Syria in 1981, Al Hadid lives and works between upstate New York and Brooklyn, New York. She received a BFA in sculpture and a BA in art history from Kent State University, an MFA in sculpture from Virginia Commonwealth University, and attended the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. Recent commissioned works include a large-scale site-specific sculpture for Princeton University Art Museum, mosaic murals for New York City's Penn Station, and large-scale sculptures in Madison Square Park, New York. Her work can be found in numerous institutional collections worldwide, including the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, the Eli and Edith Broad Art Museum, the Bronx Museum of the Arts, the Frist Art Museum, and San Jose Museum of Art. I will now pass it to Massiel to introduce Gyun and Woomin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for taking the time and braving the cold and coming here. So Gyun Hur is an interdisciplinary artist and educator whose work delves into themes of grief, memory, and the poetics of diaspora. Born in South Korea, she immigrated to Georgia at the age of 13, an experience that profoundly influences her artistic and pedagogical approaches. Hers practice encompasses installations, performances, drawings, and writings, forming a collection of autobiographical abstraction and figurative storytelling. Her recent work involves creating teardrop-shaped, hand-blown glass vessels filled with water from local rivers and creeks, symbolizing the fluidity of memory and the resilience of communities. This exploration reflects her deep engagement and the poetics of grief and beauty, as well as her commitment to community involvement in the processes of making and remembering. Recent projects was supported by the National Endowment for the Arts grant in 2024 for the project called Our Mothers, Our Water, Our Peace. Woomin Kim, our third guest, is a Korean artist currently based in Queens, New York. In her textile works and sculptures, Kim describes sceneries and memories of everyday life and urban landscapes that feel personal and precious to herself. Kim's work has been exhibited at the Rizzi Museum, Bronx Museum, Hood Museum of Art, Cincinnati Art Museum, and the Moody Center for the Arts. Kim has participated in residencies at the Queens Museum, Smack Mellon, and Art Omai. Kim collaborated with the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, Noguchi Museum, and American Folk Art Museum for various workshops and programming. Her works have been featured in the New York Times, Hyperallergic, and Bob Magazine. Kim received a BFA from Seoul National University and an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Welcome again. Actually, we want to ask you, how does it feel to be back? Anyone can jump in and answer. Also, like, if there's anything significant that you remember from your experience as being an AIM Fellow. It's on.
Hello. Thank you for coming here. Nice meeting you all. To answer the question, it's great. It's always great to be back, of course. That's, you know, I was so excited to come here. I knew I was going to have a surgery, but I said, I'm going to come, sign me up. So I'm very happy to be back. And my experience with the program and my cohort was the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was fellow at 2022. It started in the middle of COVID, and then towards the end, it was more in person and more coming to actual space and meeting everybody. So when we started it was the time that everybody was really yearning for connection and looking for, you know, community and conversation, and we really pour the energy into the program. So there was also, you know, it was when these postponed and halted museums and, you know, institutions were coming back to reopening and exhibitions were coming back. So a lot of us were about to have these new things happening. So we needed a lot of advice and a lot of practical help to navigate all that, like, new chapter of their career and new era in the art field. So this program really helped a lot in terms of, you know, these advices that we were seeking and also connecting all of us in the time that we were really needing it. So yeah, it was really great experience. We were very active before and after the session even, you know, this like energy and urge to connect with each other really connected us. Even after each session, we were very active online chatting, like, what did you think about that? You know, did you agree or disagree with that? And, you know, so that really bonded us too. So yeah, we're very close even now. I had a show last year with one of the artists, Santina curated a show, and Nikki Sherry, she just had a show. I think it came down, but Ronan Gamil is currently having a show at Materials for the Arts. It's a great show. I recommend you to all check out. So yeah, that was my wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me again.
Pleasure.
When I applied to the fellowship, I just got to New York City after having lived in Hong Kong for 4 years, and I also grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to all of schools were in the South. So as someone who's just arriving in New York City without any network, without any context of how I have landed here, this gave me a baseline, and it kind of provided a kind of affirmation and community that I didn't have. Just coming here, just kind of like wide-eyed and feeling quite lost. So that experience was really valuable as I was starting my life and career here without knowing what I was gonna do. And Eileen is here. I met Eileen at Wave Hill, also kind of the beginning of trying to figure out like how my work is conversing and being situated. So just it's a convergence of those things for me today, and like in companionship with Diana's like work and Woomin's like, I talk about their practice and their work in my teaching space, and so I feel extremely grateful years later to find myself to be able to share that out. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo. Is this on? Oh. Yeah, I would echo that sentiment too. That I actually, when I was in the AIM program, it seems the oldest one here. It was 2000, so 20 years ago, and I had just moved to New York. So it was like a baseline, like you said. It was a kind of an immediate way to meet, a handful of artists that were from a variety of backgrounds and actually ages and experiences and medium and just very different people, kind of sit together and hash out the nuts and bolts of life together, which is a very complicated thing when you're an artist, because there's no guideline, now there's books, I guess, but there's no, there's no application, right, to be an artist. Like no one's firing you. It's all self-generated, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you need to know and commiserate about. And so for me, that was nice. I'm still like, I joke my first friend in New York is still my best friend from this program. So yeah, she was in my wedding and everything. It was very, you make community where you can and where you have like-minded people and people going through similar experiences. And so, if you approach everything with, a spirit of support and encouragement, then, hopefully you see yourself grow together. So that was a nice way to enter New York City, was through the AIM program. It was very different 20 years ago. Like, this is way sophisticated. Like, I was telling you, I don't know if you want to hear this side of it, but since I'm the old one here, it was like one woman, a really like legendary woman, Jackie Battenfield. She was great. And we met I think it was in the basement, in one of the rooms, and it was just once a week, and that was it. There was a show at the end, there was this show at the end. And that was what, honestly, people applied for. It was like a huge opportunity just to show your work in a museum in New York City. Like, that was like, what more do you want, Yeah, it was an important show for me, because I got my first mention in the New York Times from that show. So, and it was like very cartoony. I had this gallerist just like hand me their business card, that night, which I was like, this seems fake. Like this, this is a scam or something. But yeah, I put a lot into that piece, because I was really excited for the exposure, right? So I was like, that piece was like really significant to me. So to take a close look at, it didn't survive, but we put a lot into that work, right? I think you all did downstairs. So anyway.
Wow, we heard incredibly great comments about the AIM Fellowship Program. We also had a very similar situation, a bonding experience, and also the show is featured in New York Times too. So congrats everyone who was in the show and who helped us. I'd like to ask Diana a question. Your work is about history. You focus on history, and we wonder how you observe the present moment as an artist whose work focuses on history and mythology. And also, this is an additional question. What do you think an artist's role is today?
I'll start with the easier one. I think for me, I think the role of the artist, or the responsibility of the artist, is just to try to get closer to their most authentic self as they possibly can. I think the role of someone who does that in a society is it creates a more open, collaborative, and supportive community. And artists have an opportunity when connecting to criticize and consider what's happening around them. So they can do that through metaphors like history, they can do that through material, they can do that through collaboration, they can do that through painting, they can do that by staring at a dot on the floor for 8 hours. You can do any number of ways, like talking about what we see. You know, there's no prescribed, way to comment about what's happening politically, right? Every artist is different. Every artist has different things going through their minds, you know. I think for me, my work serves as more, feels maybe a lot more, I shouldn't have opened with that. I feel like it's hard enough to just make work that is interesting to you and that you like at all points and to stay with it, than to kind of have to also internalize certain expectations about, commentary that you need to be making or anything. Like an artist artists don't want restrictions. That's why you're an artist. That's why, my time in the studio is about, all my decisions are my own, right? No one can tell me anything. I can literally make whatever I want. There's no one that says you can't, right? If you're in your studio, that's an incredible psychological place to be. And then to be able to analyze why you're making certain decisions as you're making them and reflect how that looks in the world is a very powerful thing. You can do that in an insular way and stay in your head forever and not pay attention, peek over and see what's going on. But I'm always kind of interested in what's going on in the world. I don't know that my journal's going to reflect it in my work because I'm speaking about a temple in Lebanon, but maybe. I feel like as a contemporary artist, everything you do has meaning and significance, and you can speak through metaphor if you don't want to speak directly.
Maybe a follow-up question to you again, Diana. We talked about the themes that you focus on, but can you please tell us a little bit about the materials and the processes of your practice, please?
My materials...
if you like, we can show the slides.
Oh, I didn't know it was up there. I thought it could be easier.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of, maybe they're hard to... That's my oldest surviving sculpture, that upside-down cathedral. It's kind of hard to see. I can start with that one. That I made... it feels like a very personal piece. The process can be kind of, so a lot of times I figure out the structure or the form of work by extruding patterns. So for this piece, I painted paint on the soles of my feet and danced the waltz, and the footprints became the kind of spires for the cathedral. So I kind of built this wonky cathedral that was about my height, and then it was made out of wood and foam and fiberglass and plaster and kind of all the sculpture set of materials, nothing too, I learned how to make molds when I was younger. I really liked to make molds. I think you can do a lot with plaster. You do a lot with welding. I welded a lot, so those are a lot of my processes that are kind of what does it need? What's curious about this material? A lot of times I'll think about how I can kind of push a material to do something kind of new or cool that I haven't seen it do. And sometimes I kind of go into a narrative spiral about something, or I don't know. It kind of starts at different points, so it's a lot more intuitive than it looks. So that's the oldest piece. And then I make these panels, which are also related to the sculpture and the same materials that I use for my sculptures. I make these kind of panels. They're kind of they're sort of between fresco and a tapestry, sort of like a combination, if you can imagine. sort of cast. It's more of a cast painting than it is oil on canvas. So it's all kind of made backwards, and then and this just opened last. So it was the most recent thing. So I'm glad that was kind of chronological. This is actually does go back to my upside down cathedral, and it did a lot of work with like the Tower of Babel, and I was born in Syria, so I have this kind of fixation with ancient places of worship or temples and old mythologies. I love a good origin story. So I went back to this kind of study of ziggurats. This is a commission for the new museum, which I thought had kind of like a ziggurat kind of serrated edge if viewed from above. So that kind of sent me down this path of making this kind of very light, weathered, like disintegrating ziggurat, I guess, because they don't have an inside. They're just basically like a mountain that was carved by man or woman. I don't know. So that's what that is. I don't know if that answers it. No. It's kind of all over is the answer.
No, thank you so much. We had a great insight about your work, and I will give it to Massiel now. And
thank you. So speaking on materiality, Gyun, your work often incorporates ephemeral materials such as silk, flowers, water, and breast milk. Can you speak about what draws you specifically to these materials?
When I think about how I make work, and I really want to depart from the way that I've been operating as an artist because I want to feel more free. But in the past 15 years, the way that I think I've been making work is to think about things that I feel that I need to wrestle with in tandem to my identity, my diasporic experience, and the grief and traumas. And I would just kind of shift through my life. Silk flowers, I found them accidentally through an assignment, and my partner took me to a cemetery where his grandparents are buried. And I saw, it's one of the biggest cemeteries in the state of Georgia, and I saw a truck passing with full of silk flowers that were discarded. And I went to the office to ask for permission if I could collect them, and they said absolutely. So I collected them for 2 years during my graduate studies, and that ended up becoming a decade-old iterations of hand-shredded silk flowers on the floor. Mm-hmm. River water came because I had a very difficult loss in my life in 2019, 2020. Didn't know if I was gonna come out of it intact. It's one of those things where life hands you a card and it's like, oh shit, like I don't know if I'm gonna make it through, And then I went to a little trip and stayed by the river water, and I walked up to a glistening, like a sun glistening on the river water, and it was really teaching me the choreography of grief. And it's like, oh, like I need to have river water in my work now. But I didn't know how, and it was really through that Wave Hill show, Eileen, that I got to find the material glass that could hold the river water in a similar way that lacquer material, which is an ancient glass object that widowers would collect their tears in that little glass jar. And symbolically, when those tears all evaporate, that means your time of grieving is over. So glass and water kind of have run through my work past 5 years. And then breast milk was during the time when I was nursing my daughter. She's now 3.5, and I would just pour that breast milk mixed with the river water in my work, because my work is also very much like in tandem to, it's an extension of my body, and the motherhood, man, nursing was messy, And But I'm also thinking about the matriarch and what runs through my body and what I'm witnessing to my daughter. And I think motherhood was my very first time in which my femme body was powerful. That it wasn't no longer a site of trauma in which I receive violence, but I was able to raise a kid and she's alive through my breast milk, right? And it felt so powerful, and I felt that that only makes sense for me to be able to then let that rest with my sculpture works. So that's how, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And do you see motherhood influencing other aspects of your practice, either in your material choices or in your concepts?
I'm so glad that I am landing in a time where, as artists, that there are other colleagues. I know that you're also a mother, and that that it's being talked about so beautifully and unapologetically, right? And I just came from Ruth Asawa's retrospective, and her having 6 children, and that being such an integral part of, but not a marketable sort of like a thing that I'm the mother and the artist. So she just lived her life fully. And but she was also ostracized because of that, right? And now I'm so lucky to be landing in time where other artists and mothers are actively engaged, and I engage in different capacities too. As you were saying, like, how can I make work as authentically as possible? Without feeling like I have to perform, because we perform those 3 pictures of us that you saw and me being here with you is all extremely performative. My work is performative. So I'm trying to figure out a way for me to merge my life into the work in the best way possible. And motherhood inevitably has entered, because that's where I am. And in the absence, my parents returned to Korea after 27 years of immigration, and good for them. I think they actually made a good decision. But in absence of my mother, and in absence of my maternal grandmother who passed recently, that in absence of them and in the presence of my daughter, who is so active, and vibrant in my life, that I'm grieving in the midst of that, you know. And I think my recent project was really holding me, you know.
Keeping you together.
Yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to Nazli.
Well, honestly, we debated about asking you this question about motherhood a lot between us, because we never ask male artists about their fatherhood experiences. And since you brought up motherhood affecting your work, we thought it would be a good time to ask this. But it was an issue between us too. Yeah. Women, and you work in textiles. We wonder what draws you to work in textiles, since we know you studied sculpture. And also we wonder where you source your materials from.
As you said, my background is sculpture, both of undergrads and grads. And even when I was in sculpture field, I worked a lot with textile elements. So a lot of my projects were involved in weaving the structure, or embroidery part, or stitching the whole structure. So it was always, I think textile is my visual language that I feel the most comfortable to process what I feel, what I think, what I want to express. It feels like a comfortable language. So it's been always my material, but specifically my recent, more like this kind of textile collage figurative happened during COVID, when I was more restricted with my space, my studio and everything shut down, and that was the time for me to dive deeper to the material. And I've been wanting to work on this collage project for a long time. It just gave me the circumstance to really focus on that new technique. And then I think when I was working much more kind of restricted space with material, I kind of felt like suddenly I was more storytelling with the fabric, and something about that textile quality enabled me to be more honest and comfortable and expressive with the images and memories and more personal stories. And I think it's something about the fabric being such a democratic material that everybody know what it means, how it feels. Everybody have their personal memory and contact. We are all wearing one. Fabric is almost like air. You look around, it's there. So yes, sourcing and using it and telling story through it just feels all very organic, that I don't have to go out of my way and search for it or something. So yeah, I think that really draw me into fabric deeper. And I'm still going back and forth between the textile collage one and sculptural project, but yeah, when it comes to fabric, that I think was very invitational element of the fabric.
Well, that brings me to my second question, which is super related now. You recently started bringing more sculptural elements into your textile work, and we want to know what you think about how do you define sculpture and textile work? Do you think sculpture encapsulates textiles in it, and what's the relation between them for you? Your explanation, please.
Yeah, so that question actually made me think about it because even when I was much more figurative or more collage and kind of a wall hanging format, I didn't necessarily think of it as I am choosing different media than sculpture, or because fabric is actually very strong with their materiality, and they have all of the fabric have very strong character and personality. Sometimes they're very strong with what they want to be. They don't want to be folded sometimes. They want to stretch, don't want to stretch. Like the materiality and behavior of fabric is so vast and very interactive, and I feel like I'm relying on it a lot when it comes to what kind of decision making I want to make in my studio. So it's very material and sculptural process, and so I don't know if I can clearly answer how I draw the line between sculpture and textile, but if I just think about my recent project, maybe you are referring to, the finger ones. That one is just new project, and it's wood sculpture in finger shape. And the idea is very ongoing project, so I'm not gonna make a lot of sense because I'm still kind of in the process, but it's a lot about hand. It's basically like love letter to hand, and I think a lot, especially working a lot with sewing and this kind of embroidery and beading, this like process of working. I think a lot about craft and its proximity to life and everyday life and the democratic quality of it. And I also think a lot about hand as a mediator of life and the creative activity, the labor and the craftsmanship and expression and the labor. So that's my new project. I don't have super clear answer how it's gonna end, but that's what's going on in my studio right now.
Thank you. So Diana, I have a question. Your work often shifts between bodily, architectural, and monumental scales. How do you think about scale in your practice, and how has that thinking changed over time?
I don't know how it's changed over time. I just feel like I'm, I think the context changes over time, but you know, scale is a relationship question. So I'm kind of always interested in like the macro and the micro. So I think a lot of the things I think about in my work are kind of a gradient of some kind. I do think about extremes a lot. So, you know, when I was younger and I was in like high school and I wanted to be an artist, I was just sitting like, you know, drawing at the microscopic little level at my desk with like Prismacolor pencils and, you know, super hyper realistic drawings. And it was very intimate, you know, it was just me. I mean, everyone saw them because everyone was watching me draw them at school, but, you know, it was like very small marks. And then I got to college and I learned how to weld and I learned about contemporary art. I saw installation and I saw, I don't know, you know, I thought maybe it's not here, it's like here, you know. So I was into making these kind of room-sized things or like cave-type things that you could like live in, and you know, scale is about like your body's relationship to a thing. It's always relational. It's not. People say, oh, you're you know, scale, like they think it's just large. It's not just large. It's like you know, scale of something. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm not saying anything very revolutionary here. I don't know how I think about it. I think about it like constantly, but also like metaphorically, like I think about, you know, small and big. Every time I think of something happening to me, I think about it happening in the world. Or if I, you know, I think about how our governments are like our families, how we treat countries like people, you know.
Right.
There's scale is like you know, I do think about scale a lot, but not as not always as literally. But it's hard. It's hard to move from small, intimate gestures to like, you know. But that is how my work is made, actually. Like the piece I did for Madison Square Park was out. You know, it was like 60,000 people a day walking by it, and it started with like just this tiny little drip on my wall that kind of it got bigger and got structural, and then needed, you know, engineering sign off. So, you know, it's like this very like tiny whisper of a mark that starts to, you know, grow strong and powerful, and you can, yeah. So yeah, that's how I think about scale. But I think I've kind of like always been thinking about that. I actually think it's like a deep-seated immigrant reaction. I think I've been told, I remember being told by someone's dad that I was like, you're from the other side of the world. I was like, wow. Like, you know, that feeling of like this, you know, it's a scalar, it's a scalar problem.
That actually brings me to my next question regarding when you mentioned Madison Square Park about public sculptural projects. Can you talk about your experience about these monumental scale outdoor sculptures that you do, and how that process differs from a traditional studio setting? Yeah,
that's very hard. That's what I said. The context changes. Like things feel very big when it's just me and the thing in my studio, and then it goes out in the world, and it's like, oh, this is just one person's idea. You know, like it's not. I don't know. It's like I don't do a ton of public, you know, I don't have like a long, you know, I have a couple of mosaics, or 3 mosaics at Penn Station. So that was its own kind of thing, thinking about like a context in which people are constantly moving, you know, they're not standing in a gallery. So, you know, that's kind of changed. And I never worked with mosaic before, so that was kind of interesting to think about how to make this like stone feel fluid, because I think a lot of my work kind of is rooted in kind of like fluid exchange, or like you know, like liquid and powder to solid, or, you know, pooling things, or inks, or I don't know, drips, a lot of like liquidity. Anyway, what was I saying? I lost my thread.
Talking about public sculptural projects.
Public sculpture, yeah, so back to scale. Yeah, so I don't have like you know, I've done a temporary, a public, a permanent, and I don't know, does it change how I think about my work? I mean, you know, it's hard because you have to involve other people. Like, by definition, you have to like consider other people, and you have to involve other people. There are engineers, like I think that's like my nemesis is an engineer. Like, I have never gotten along with an engineer. They're, you know, so you have to answer to those things, which is reasonable. It's all very reasonable, but you know, it takes practice to kind of stick to your gut of what you want to do in the face of some really tall, like high stakes, you know, or like some dude that just insists that you need it to do this, and I don't, whatever. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, you have to remember that all this input that you're being given, or direction, it can, you know, you have to guard yourself. You have to like, I had to really be like, that's not the sculpture that I'm making. That's not the piece that I want, you know? You have to like know to respond to that. That can be hard when there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions and whatever. People, you know, you have to also make it a certain permanence. You have to think of, you know, you have to make a lot of decisions that you might not make if you had total freedom in the studio, in a way, you know? But that's kind of part of the gig, because you're in public, and people have to be safe, and it has to be interesting to that scale of audience, you know, that kind of scale of attention. Like, it's you know, it's all. I do those kinds of things, I guess, not all the time.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do now is just clear a lot of space for me to have no restrictions, because I just finished a new build studio, so I'm like, this is a really perfect time to say no to a lot of stuff that is giving me any conditions on what I should make. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, it should go here, or should be here at this time, or it should have
the freedom to do what you want.
Just nothing. I just want like total. I know that sounds like I'm being. I don't know. That sounds like I'm being like ungrateful or something. It's actually me being middle-aged. It's me being a middle-aged mom, and I just want to do things that really are exciting, and that don't put any more restriction on my life that already exists in our lives. That's my goal this year, so look out for my show in 2 years.
So I actually have a follow-up question, and it's not one that's prepared, but I did see a YouTube video that you did a paper-making residency. I think it was year-long.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you in relation to everything else that you do in your practice?
Yeah, it was.
Because that felt pretty.
It was very fluid.
Yeah.
So to speak, literally. I loved learning about making paper. I've never I actually should try to draw on paper, but I have almost for 20 years, I think, been drawing almost exclusively on Mylar or something transparent. I really like drawing on that kind of surface. So I never really thought about paper, except for I did make a paper plate project once, but I mean paper. And I always I never thought about paper as a sculptural material, because I felt, not that it's not, but I felt like I could get what I needed out of plaster. I needed the strength of the plaster, so I wasn't really thinking about paper. But then when I started thinking about paper as a painting, as color, right? Because it's cast paper as a cast image. It's basically how I make my panels in a sense. That's very similar to the thinking of my panel work. So I loved working with them. It's just very, it's a very super niche, like, I mean, it's like, I don't know, there's maybe one other paper place in the world that does kind of what they do, and they're like super special. It's like the coolest thing. And yeah, I just like, I go into some hypnotic state when I start making them. It's super fun. It's just so fun. So stuff like that is like, oh, that's what we're like, that's when you feel that, that's like, oh, this is my home. Like, this is where I'm wired to be, right? So I try to like do those things that are just like, you know, someone asked me recently if I meditate, and I was like, I do not meditate. Like, I know that I lose respect by people, like, for saying that. I probably should. It's on my list of things to do. But, like, being in the studio like that, it really is a form of meditation for me. It brings my whole nervous system down. I'm flowing. I'm like, time flies 3 hours later, and you're like, all artists know this, right? Like, it's like the flow state. It's like the best. You can do it in music, you can do it in dance. It's what we like live for. And I think we connect with work where we recognize that person's in their flow state, you know, I think. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Yes. And this is for Gyun. What does community mean to you? I know it's an important part of your work, your practice. Sometimes the community can be the activators or parts of the work. For example, in Our Mothers, Our Water, Our Peace. And sometimes they can be the makers of the work, like Repose. Could you please explain what it means for your practice?
Thank you for that question. Yeah. It's a very heavily used word in context of contemporary art making, and someone was saying, like, I wear a lot of hats. Yes, we are an artist, and an educator, administrator, a caretaker, translator, I mean, many, many things. And the condition in which I think how my immigrant life started, I was 13, Atlanta, Georgia. We're finding ourselves in very two different lives. Monday through Friday is white suburbia, like a little north of Atlanta neighborhood. And then Saturday is the Korean school where I taught. And then Sunday is the Korean church where I played the piano and served as a Sunday school teacher and cleaned up afterwards and then did the Bible study and then checked in with my parents about some of the bills that I have to translate and call or like help them out, and then I drive out to my college. I never went to a football game. You know, like that condition in which how I grew up, or many of us have grown up with immigrant parents. I knew, like, I went to church and I saw how it functioned, which is you show up for one another. You show up for one another. Despite the imperfections and the violence in which church has caused in our lives, of course, I was telling actually Eileen, I just came back from Montgomery, Alabama. I never even been there, even growing up in Georgia. And my uncle recently just passed very suddenly, and the service was held in this Korean church in Montgomery, Alabama, and 150 people showed up on a cold Wednesday night. They were all workers at Hyundai, the car plant, you know. They gave like $50, $100, you know. My aunt and uncle, they all also worked there too. And it's like about a little over $3,000 so she can pay for the funeral stuff, cremation, right? Like, that's the community that I know that raised me. I left it though, with education, with aspirations, that I had to kind of let go of the community that raised me for me to be in New York City as an artist, as an educator, right? So to re-enter the community in context in which how I was raised, and knowing how much my body knows that, because I was there, in the South, living like that from age 13 to 30, like 29 or so. So that project, Our Mothers, Our Water, and Our Peace, and how I sort of orchestrated and facilitated, community engagements and workshops and handing out these glass vessels to individual families for them to hold it for a year and to recollect and to sing songs and to continue to be with the people. That structure is something that I learned from that life that I once had that I no longer have, right? And I think I'm grieving of what that was for me, what it couldn't do for me, but what it still did for me, which was to show up in the best way that you can, So that's the community, and I think, and to translate that siloed way of how immigrants live, that's not visible in the mainstream of American life. And I think I saw a lot of that actually in this show, visualizing and articulating things that's not necessarily so visible and understood with the, beautiful blonde hair. Nothing wrong with the blonde hair, because I also bleach my hair, but the aesthetics of Americana, right? That I know that how I understand my community is not part of that. And I want to continue to figure out a way to let that enter into kind of how people, the general public, experiences my work. So that's a little bit of, yeah.
Well, continuing with the same theme, immigration, we wonder if your immigrant experience in the US changes the materials you use. For example, in your previous works, you use silk flowers, fleeting organic materials, and in your recent works, you have glass, and it's solid. So does that mean that you're more grounded, rooted in where you are right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think it mirrors kind of where I am, meaning that and that's why I say I want to really consider moving onward. When you were saying I want no restrictions, that kind of liberatory practice in the way that you live and may work. I don't think I know that yet, or I have known it when I was a child, but that was long ago. Past the 15 years, I haven't operated. Materially, I was so obsessed with fragility, vulnerability, the condition in which I think a lot of diaspora people know that our condition itself is always vulnerable. And I was obsessed with that idea. And that got reflected in my choices of work, in material and process. But I want some permanency, and I want some stability. And I think glass is kind of going a little bit closer to that in proximity, but still quite fragile. Yes. And hopefully I can find myself in the studio one day where I'm just painting a sunset and, yeah, that's my goal, right? Yeah, right, the pure being able to just be you and just chill out, but I haven't been able to. I will. Thank you for that invitation.
Thank you so much.
So Woomin, I have a question to ask you. So as a textile-based artist myself, obviously I love your work, and I remember first seeing your solo show at Susan Inglet Gallery in 2022. Can you share more info about that project and your inspiration behind the work?
Yeah, so I think that show happened 2022. Yeah, I think so. And then that was the time that I was working on Sijang project, and Sijang means market in Korean, and generally it refers this kind of street markets. And I've been wanting to make this work for a very long time, and I've been envisioning it for a long time. And as I said, this COVID shutdown and having very restricted space gave me the opportunity to really initiate that. So it's all about the street markets. I grew up in Korea. It's kind of it's literally street market, and if you go to Korea, you will see it every 10 or 20 blocks. It's like whole street occupied by different kinds of vendors, and it's a mixture of fish market next to shoe store, next to general store, next to hardware. So it's such a assemblage of materials and objects. It's not nicely curated. It's not whole food. It's not anything. It's really like scallion next to like a shovel, some mixture of everything. So I was really I grew up there. That's where I used to go snack, hang out, tag along my mom shopping, and that was like deep part of my life. And ever since I came to US, or even before that, I noticed this kind of tone of Asian market, that when this kind of media, Western media, describe Asian market, I just felt like that's kind of different than how I understand or remember this place, because it's always mysterious and dark and humid. You don't know what's happening there, or overly romanticized or exotic place. So I just wanted to make my version of it just the way that I know, which is colorful and celebrative and energetic, and place to hang out, place to chat with your neighbors, and this kind of space. So it has been living in my head for a long time, but the circumstantial situation at the time gave me a chance to initiate the work, but also at the same time I felt the urge to tell my version of story, because at the time, especially the xenophobia towards this Asian market and Asian community as a whole was really heightened. Not that it's new, but it was really getting really violent at the time. So a lot of things combined, and 2022 was about a couple years after I started the project, so I had a good built-up body of work, and that just was a good opportunity to show the project. So yeah, that was what was in the exhibition.
Thank you. And I'm very curious to know more about your experience at Materials for the Arts, because I know the project that you did there, the imagery was different because you essentially depicted still lives of the bins, the warehouse. I think I remember seeing one image. I don't think it's in the slides, but it's of a unicorn. It's like a unicorn depicted. And so I'm curious on the new materials that you experimented with at Materials for the Arts. Did it reveal new ways to understand the community that you're now a part of?
So yeah, that residency was really magical and really intense in every way. It was, so it's basically, I don't know if you know this place, Materials for the Arts, it's tens of thousands of square feet of warehouse, and they collect fabric, electricity goods, households goods, furniture, all different kinds of donation all around the city, and they distribute it for free for people who need it, like teachers or artists, organizations, community workers. And my studio was in the middle of the warehouse, so I was really working in the middle of all that energy of education happening, community work is happening, distributing is happening. So, and I myself was have access to all that material, and they have fabric session that is all mountains of fabric, so I never ran out of fabric when I was working there. I need yellow, and I would step out like 10 steps, and there's like 3 different shades and different materials of yellow. So it was such a magical experience, and I started the residency with my own plan. I wanted to do this room project, which is about making personal spaces of my friends and family. But first week, I changed my mind, and I decided I want to make a landscape of here, because I thought it was unique. I've never known any other place. It's not a thrift store. They're not profiting from it. They're really distributing it for education purpose and community purpose. So I wanted to describe this place, and I named the project The Warehouse, because they call that warehouse the warehouse. And usually institutions, the warehouse is kind of a backstage when things are hidden, but that organization, it's a center stage. Everything is happening there. They have gala there. And so yeah, it was such a special place. And as I said, I was invited for a short period, so it was more like a temporary guest kind of, but the energy of this kind of, when you walk in there, there's no such a division. You're just in it, and you have to you're part of it, no matter, what you are. And I learned a lot of that way of functioning and creating and participating in an educational program, in community programs. And there was a lot of eye-opening experiences. A lot of things were much more instant, or much faster pace of discussion, or skipping the discussion and suddenly something's happening. So it was all very, very, very dynamic, and it was such an educational experience for me. And I'm still part of the community. Once you're connected to MFTA, you're part of MFTA. So I still visit there to source material, of course. I get my fabric from there a lot, and yeah, I'm always, whenever they need, I'm ready to help out, participating. So yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you so much.
That really sounds like the Korean markets you described. Great. And we will open the conversation to questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Thanks for having this.
Thank you.
My feeling is that in this space, there's both the nitty-gritty and the big picture. So the nitty-gritty question that I have is, what sources of art opportunities did you find most helpful is the nitty-gritty. But the big picture is, I want to say just, I'm 1 or 2 generations removed from you all. And I'm so happy to see that you have combined your creativity in many different ways, from motherhood to, installations at the museums. I'm proud of you. I really am. And I like that I can see both things coexist. When I was younger, didn't see that. So kudos to you. But could you also give some insights as to what are some of the best sources of art opportunities that you find?
Thank you for saying that. Honestly, the best sources were just unrestricted grants. So the Joan Mitchell, the Paula Krasner, USA Fellowship, I don't know, there's many, NIFA. Those are always the best. Just give money to artists. That's like number 1. And after that is residencies, I think, like this. If there's an artist that you like, go to their bio and just see all the grants and their residencies. Everyone lists what they've done. It's kind of like and also, there's a whole book downstairs that one of the, I don't have it, the zines. Yeah, one of the zines. It's incredible. Yeah, that should be online. Is that online somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a PDF.
Oh yeah, there's a PDF version online that you can access. Kyle, Jennifer. Who's the third person? And Rocio.
From
From our cohort. They should be still seen censors.
Or, yeah. Oh, I have the only mic.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind comment as well. Yeah. In addition to all the resources, one thing that I didn't realize that I could tap into is the relationships. People say that all the time, but I think it's me maturing as a person, finally knowing that, oh, like, I can ask if I want something. I can ask if I want feedback. I can ask if I want mentoring. I can ask if I need a gig. I may not get yes from everybody. I may not get what I thought that I was gonna get. But out of those maybe asks, perhaps you could get one or two that feels meaningful for you to take the next step. You know, even if it is a small incremental step that feels meaningful for you, you know. And I think for a long time I didn't know I could ask. And I didn't know many things, and I thought that I had to figure it out all by myself, you know? So I think really nurturing those relationships in ways that feels supportive for you, both deep and shallow. I don't know. I mean, I'm still learning because I'm not very good either. Like, I'm very good at like making that one friend, and I always go to that person. And I'm trying to like figure out how to like learn to be more open to opportunities through people. And I'm still learning. Yeah.
Thank you for your advice. I'm like so nodding hard. I'm like, you're so right. Huh. Yeah, and I think it's just like what I just say, same thing. You know, it's like, but asking requires what you need right now. You need to know what you need to ask something. So I would definitely say, because the character of applications are so diverse. Sometimes they give you space, sometimes they give you money, sometimes they give you connection, sometimes they give you friendship. Like there's so many diverse opportunities. So I think it's important to know, do I want community right now, like-minded artist group, or do I want space? Do I want money? Or like job, or you know, sustainability. Like there's so many different kinds of needs. So I think it helps to know what you need right now the most, to kind of see because what was really helpful for me might not be helpful for you, and you know, it's really different. So yeah, something. Yeah.
Hi, how are you? My question is simple. Why are sculpture artists turning to textile? Why do you think?
Why sculpture artists
Did you hear my? Oh.
turn into textile?
Why are sculptors turning into textiles nowadays? Like, why do we see that more and more as the years go by? Because you know, sculptures 10 years ago looked so different than how they do now, and you know, I guess in my own opinion, like it's like an economic reason, like, you know, to reuse and see like what we could source. So I was kind of like wondering what you guys thought about that. What's your opinion?
I'm not sure if sculpture artists are turning into textile. I think there have been people who work with textile always. It's one of the oldest material as human activity, like as a production of human activities, like fabric, like spinning thread is one of the first things that happened in like
so-called civilization. So textile has been method of expression and, utilitarian, and but also, decorating, like always. I think it just has been just the politic in art world has been very maybe patriarchal and very like, the politics of material has been different, maybe what you referred to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe what is considered as creativity and art might not have been considered art maybe some decades ago. So I don't think people are suddenly making a lot of textile. I think people always have been very close to textile and being very creative and very sincere about it. I think just like people are being less discriminated because of their media.
It would be interesting, though, to see, like, if there's, a parallel, or I don't know how you could graph it, but, in more difficult economic times, if people use fabric more in their work, that could be an interesting, yeah. You should research that. Get those numbers. I don't know how. That's interesting. I mean, there's a lot, like, of course those things affect, the economics, like that affects our everyday. So artists are going to turn to whatever is easiest in their environment, like 100%. But, I don't know. Yeah?
Hi, how you doing? It's very nice to hear from all three of you. I love your work, and the slideshow was amazing. I can't imagine what it's like, and that kind of leads to my question as an aspiring artist. And what is it like when you get overwhelmed? Because, everybody has a different process, and it's just interesting to me when I speak to different artists from different genres to see what their process is, because it can get pretty dark when you're trying to find funding, or you're trying to put together the idea and it's not solid, or you have the idea but not the funding, or the location, or you have to deal with rules, you don't like rules, or rules of the foundation, just all the different ways that it can get overwhelming in an artist's mind when trying to create a project. So in your own, I guess, favorite project, or whatever it is that you got going on, what's your process for dealing with being in overwhelming odds?
I have a quick and easy. Make more work. Make more work fixes everything. Everything. Anytime I think about, like, my brother will tell me this, like, if I'm stressed out, whatever, he's like, your mantra. The answer's in the studio. Like, it's always in the studio. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you more money. It'll make you more connected. Just go to the studio. Nothing better. Everything that you feel is out of control in your life, you gain control in your studio. The more connected you are to your work, the more you're gonna, all of us started, I don't know, not all of us, but like, I started like everyone else. Like, everyone has one little connection, one little leg up, use the hell out of that, whatever it is, a cousin, whatever. You have some single advantage in your life that you can use, everyone. If you can always try to be grateful for that one thing that you can rely on, it might just be your local library, like whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. But, it's super hard. Like, I never thought I'd be here. Like, I'm overwhelmed right now watching all of you guys. Like, I didn't know what images were being shown, and it was like really wild to just like watch your faces react to my work. I was like, is this what Bad Bunny feels? I don't know. Like, everyone's like having this beautiful reaction. I forgot about that, Like, I think that's really wonderful. The answer's always in your work. I really think that.
But if you're not able to, and if you don't have capacity to return to that, right, then you've got to find the support, whether it is a glass of wine or...
Don't turn to alcohol.
or a friend. But one very practical advice that I will offer back, 10, 12 years ago, I didn't really know how to use Excel. Now I do. I color code and the organizational skill. Like my desktop looks crazy. Like there are a lot of cluttered things, but when the project gets a little bit larger in its scale, like my most recent one was extremely complicated for 2 years. So I heavily relied on the Excel sheet and the organization on that Google Drive. I knew that I could go there, and I knew that I had all the information there, and I knew that I could kind of then visually organize the information for me to communicate that out, so that I could be preventive in ways that I feel overwhelmed by amount of communication, amount of admin work that I had to do. Because a lot of it is, yes, you do the studio making that happens, but especially the community public facing work, that Atlanta project, 2 years project, for me, 70% of the work was admin. So for me to be preventive in ways that I was overwhelmed, but the color-coded Excel sheets became extremely helpful.
Breaking it down into smaller pieces.
Yeah, like breaking it down so that I can chew it, so that it's not a tsunami of feeling like, oh, I have to do like, and then it's like a jumbled up thing, right? But then I had tabs, and I had color-coded things. And so then my partner, the organization executive director, and she could show up as a partner for me because I had that information available for her to then understand, right? So then we could divide that labor. And when I got emotionally overwhelmed, then I had to be vulnerable and call her up and say, I can't hold it up tonight. Like, it's a lot. It's really a lot for me, So that's something that, let's omit the alcohol part, but the Excel sheet part, I think, is something that I want to really, really encourage organization, yeah.
I'm also learning again, because I relate to you 100%. I'm overwhelmed all the time. And I'm learning so much, because for me it's I don't actually feel in control in my studio a lot of times, and I feel very overwhelmed a lot of, not that it's not fun, it's actually fun to be in that space, but I just feel like it's only maybe last 1% before completion of my work, I feel oh, this is making sense now. But before that, oftentimes nothing makes sense, and but I just feel what you meant, just go studio and make work, and things start just sit there. I think that just means you just have a built-up experience of witnessing becoming over and over again, and then you just have a belief okay, this doesn't make sense, and it's overwhelming, and it's not comfortable, but I know maybe at the 99% of completion it might make sense, but it might not, and it's not gonna kill me, it's not, and then just being there kind of become okay, it's just status of B, and yeah, that's yeah. But wow, thank you so much for your advice.
Yeah, okay, so we'll take 2 more questions. No, towards the end.
Hello. I'm really curious if you guys had a vision of what success meant for you in your careers, and if there was a certain event or show or something that just clicked in your head that was I'm a professional artist now, and I'm, pursuing my career and what I want to do and what I'm meant to do. That makes sense?
Oh, no. I don't know if I'm like right for first person to answer this question. It's really, I think it changed for me a lot. Like if you ask me that like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, now it all answer feels different because I feel like I want different things each stage or each period of my art career. At some point it was, I want to have a show at certain place, or I want to go to certain like residency, or I want to make money professionally out of art. Like each stage I felt like is different, but right now I might sound different after 1 year, but right now I'm in kind of a stage, and like my health condition right now and everything, it just makes me a lot about mental health and not being swayed by every opportunity come and go, every project starting and finishing, every, like standpoint and everything. So for me, my answer is you just have to be healthy, you just mentally and physically. And then if you can be in studio and sustain your practice, being healthy, I think that is really important for me at this point.
I remember asking that question when I was doing like a pre-college at Pratt, and we had this artist here, and then like I raised my hand, and because I was also really curious, because I know that the path of being an artist and continuing to be one is extremely challenging. It's a miracle that I'm here. It's a miracle in my life that I'm still alive, right? That itself, then I consider it as a success, but it's hard because I think our egos, our pride, social media, performance, these metrics institutionally, what validates you as a successful artist really comes at you. So there's a lot of pressure, and I have fought with it and I still fight with it, And like, for example, that Atlanta project, I feel like I just poured everything that I knew, heart and mind and whatever, and then no review, no echo back. Other people are suddenly like, oh, I'm interested in buying institutionally or private, all these like glass vessels, and then everybody dropped it because of the tariffs. And then, I don't know, is it gonna eventually? So, sometimes you pour and you believe, I still believe in the work that I have made and I will continue to make. But is that gonna really measure my success? And I'm gonna have to contend with that, wrestle with that and where my values lie, I even asked myself, how am I here? Because I don't have a gallery, and you know what I'm saying? I don't have that trajectory of what perhaps visibly what successful career may look like. But for me, I think what success may be is that if I can project, give a sense of trajectory within myself that in 10 years that I think I may still be teaching and still be making work. And I have a very specific goal with my work that I want this to be a part of a larger conversation. It's kind of like an abstract idea and aspiration I have. So this feels like a tremendous honor and success for me. And I went to Ruth Asawa's retrospective with 2 of my former students whom I met 7 years ago, and we had lovely lunch. They're in my life. That feels like a tremendous success for me, So I know it's hard, man, that word, success, But hold yourself tight and protect your heart for what it is that it's important to you. But it's really hard. I just want to validate that with a question, Yeah.
So it sounds like we're describing different kinds of success. There's obviously spiritual, I don't know if success and spiritual sound right together, but this feeling of connectedness, which can make everything feel worthwhile and kind of, but I think people say success, maybe you mean like financial, I think most people think financial success, which really is not connected to being an artist. Like they're two, they relate because you can obviously, the more financial security you have, the easier it is to kind of deal with your demons. So I think when I was young and I was thinking about it, I thought, if I can in some way avoid a job that I hate, right? Like if I could be creative, either live on my work or live on something adjacent to my, teaching or whatever, like have a full life like that, that was like I wish artists were just paid just like a living wage, because then you wouldn't be using that, you wouldn't be thinking about that as a metric, right? You would just be thinking about like, what do I need to make today, and how does that make me happy, and whatever. Like that's not related to the financial success part, Like there are a lot of really rich artists whose work is very uninteresting. There's a lot of like very interesting artists who are not making any money. So, anyway.
Hello, hello. Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you to the museum for this event. It's been great. And to each of you, you are each so beautiful. Your stories are amazing. I am so moved. Thank you. This question specifically is for Gyun. I would love to know how you stand firm in being an interdisciplinary artist. I'm an interdisciplinary artist myself, and of course, if anyone else has, please share. Sometimes it can get overwhelming or discouraging because I love to do everything, but how do I pitch? How can I make others understand? But I know it's how do I stand firm in knowing that all of these mediums coexist within me. So I would love to know how you stand firm in that.
Thank you for that question. Can I ask you what your work, what it speaks to?
Nature. Oh, thank you. So I'm a painter, I'm a DJ, I'm a poet, photographer, but I'm inspired by nature. I'm inspired by second chances, by living and moving and hope and thank you, and femininity and all these things. But it all comes back to nature.
And that's it. Doesn't matter what you end up doing, how it gets manifest in forms and materials, and that's how I approached it. That I studied painting, I was in love with figurative painting in undergrad. I studied sculpture, but I think over time that what I realized is there was a story or like yearning, a kind of reconciliation that was impossible in the world, that I could imagine that's possible in my studio, that I could do, the reckoning. And I found whatever forms that worked for me and has worked for me. So I would try out the writing, even though I'm not a writer, like I'll do the performance because my body was asking. But it wasn't about that, but it was about what I wanted it to say. So I think focus on that when you speak to others about your work, that is the forefront of your voice, and everything else supports that. That they're all lining up, these forms and different things that you do, they're lining up for you and your story, right? So you are supported by them, not hindered by them.
Well, that wraps. Okay, well, that wraps up our panel. panel. I just want to say thank you all so much again for braving the cold and for being with us throughout the entire convening. I hope you enjoyed all of the workshops. I hope you got a tote bag, a zine, got your portfolio reviewed. Yeah, and I'd especially love to thank Diana, Gyun, and Woomin for being here and being so kind and generous with their time. And of course to the Bronx Museum staff, those behind the scenes who really helped make and put everything together. And on behalf of the AIM 45 cohort, we specifically would like to thank Patrick Rowe, Shami Momin, Nell Klugman, Alex Montané, and Wildriana Paulino, specifically for helping us facilitate this convening. Thank you again.